Good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's me, Ramesh Thakur. So today I'm going to talk about Triffles, a one-out play by Susan Glassfield, and this is a dramatic story, dramatic irony story. And what happens? Dramatic irony is a type of story where um, individual character, individual characters may not know, yes, each and everything, but the reader and audience may have the information regarding that. So this is a dramatic story. So let's move forward. Yeah, the Trifles. This is one of play, an American 19th century drama. Okay, and just with the help of these pictures, you can simply predict that no, there must be some kinds of crime, or someone may be the culprit, or someone may be the convicted. Yes, and similarly, we can have these two women investigating something. There is one, bird case. One bird is here dead. Yes, so and here any kinds of investigations might be going on. Okay, so this story also relates with a real incidents. Okay, we'll talk of that. What is the real incidents? So here, when you see the picture of this home, this is a home, a farmhouse. Okay, and where you'll see the family members standing, and this is the house of John Hossack family in 1892. So John, the man who was murdered, actually John was murdered, and his wife Margaret. Margaret was accused of the murder. Okay, and the writer had reported about this murder and taking the reference of the same incidents or same murder. Yes, the writer Glassfield has written this story. Okay, so this story is based on the murder of John Hossack, which Glassfield reported on while working as a journalist. Yes, because he was a journalist. On December 2nd, 19, Hossack's wife, Margaret, yes, Margaret, was arrested for killing her own husband. To put that, an unknown person, and as per her information, Margaret claimed that someone entered her house or broke into her house, and he or she killed her husband. But at the time of killing, she was sleeping by the side of her husband. But she didn't know, as she said. She said that she didn't know about that because she was sound asleep. Yes, this is the real situation. And for that, Margaret was arrested for the murder. Okay. And Glassfield followed this story closely and reported on its development over the course of the Hossack's arrest and the trials. So she had known much about the incident. She had known much about the killing, the murder. Reporting Penarich's portrayal of Hossack as a formidable and cold-blooded woman. Yes, as she found that how Mrs. Hossack was quite formidable and cold-blooded woman, and because of her nature also, yes, her nature also, she must have killed her husband. That was the thing. Having beaten her husband brains out with an axe. Okay. After Hossack's conviction, what happens? Glassfield, she resigned from the post of the journalist, and she then started writing, and she wrote this one play, Trifles. A year after Trifles' success, Glassfield turned the play into a short story. Actually, this was written in the short story also, and the title was "The Jury of Her Peers." Similarly, then Glassfield used in this story, she has followed a type of technique of writing. Yes, and the technique is that she has used third person throughout the story, third person, and limited omniscient, where what happens, the author mostly sticks closely to one character, as Glassfield has done this. This in this story mainly focuses on mini rights. Okay, mini rights in this story. which is mostly supposed to be the Margaret in the real context. Okay, and remains in third person. So third person, and the narrator can switch between different characters also, but the main focus comes to the protagonist, the main character. Okay, or the one character. Okay, so this is the historical background or the real background of the story. Yeah, the Triffles. We're going to play Triffles. So let's talk about the settings. The story has the setting of 19th century. Okay, and there's the talk of the kitchen. Okay, the kitchen is quite gloomy, messed. Yes, not well managed. The things are scattered here and there. Okay, abandoned farmhouse of John Wright, and John Wright here. John Wright here is taken as the husband of Margaret, who was killed, or Hossack, or Mr. Hossack. Unwashed pans under the sink, the loaf of bread outside the bread box, or dish towel on the table, and other signs of incomplete work. So here in this story, the writer has tried to show the condition of the kitchen and the kitchen and the things which are spread here and there. Yes, so that unmanaged kitchen, or it may raise fingers on the on the person who works in the kitchen. Yeah, are the skills of, let's say, housekeeping skills of, or kitchen keeping skills of the woman or the man who works in the kitchen. Similarly, the outer door, what happens the same way? What happens? Some people they come to investigate, or they come inside. Okay, the outer door opens, the rear, and the sheriff comes in, followed by the county attorney and the Hale, county attorney, Hale, and Mr. Sheriff, yeah, who has mostly administrative power and who is supposed to be, let's say, administrator or type of judge. Okay, so this follow. Okay, maybe they're the case that they have come here to investigate something. So they are followed by the two women. Yes, Sheriff's wife and Mrs. Hale. And Mrs. Minnie Wright is there in the rocker, okay, rocking chair. So this is the setting of the story. So let's talk of the characters. Who are the characters in the story, or the one play, the Triffles. Okay. So you can also see here with the pictures, one man taking notes here, and one sitting over here, and another explaining, and two women are there. Probably he is a county attorney, and Mr. Sheriff, then Mr. Hale, and two Mrs. Sheriff, or Mrs. Peters and Mrs. Hale, and here the rocker, one woman is sitting. Yes, she may be, or she is Minnie Wright, who is accused for murdering her husband. So the first one, Judge Henderson. Judge Henderson, he is the county attorney, and he is a young man. Henry Peters, the local sheriff, and he had some administrative powers to look after the local affairs, and husband of Mrs. Peters, and he is in middle age. Mrs. Hale. So Mr. Hale, Levis Hale, he is the neighbor of the Wrights. Okay, Minnie Wright and John Wrights are the husband of Mrs. Hale, and she is also in the middle age. Mrs. Peters is the wife of Sheriff, and she's light wiry woman and a thin nervous face. She has thin nervous face. Mrs. Hale, yeah, she is the neighbor, and she is the wife of Mr. Hale, okay, Levis Hale, and neighbor of the Wrights, and the wife of Levis Hale, and she's larger and ordinarily more comfortable looking, but disturbed now and looks fearfully more critical of the main judgment and criticizing women. She supports feminism, and she supports her gender role also, and she mostly expresses her opinions against any kinds of dominations done to women by men. So Mrs. Hale. John Wright, actually he is the murderer. Yeah, he's the murder victim, and he is killed. He is murdered, and he's the owner of the house, that farmhouse. He's a good social stranger and didn't drink and kept his word, paid his debts also. He's a hard, but in spite of that, though he is good, but he's very hard case. He's a very hard man. So people around him mostly feel difficulty in cooperating with him, Mr. John White, and he is killed. Mrs. Minnie Wright, Mrs. Minnie Wright, actually before marriage, actually she got married 30 years ago. At a time before that, yes, she was, Minnie Foster. Her surname was Foster, but after getting married, she became Minnie Wright. John Wright's wife and his suspected murderer. See, before marriage, she used to wear pretty clothes and be lively. She was quite extroverted. She was glamorous before that. Okay, she used to sing in the choir as sweet and pretty bird, but she was timid. She was a type of type of a person having coward nature. Okay, timid, and she didn't have very strong heart. Okay, so she was flattery before marriage. Yeah, 30 years ago. But after marriage, what happens? She changed. She changed to an unhappy woman after marriage, as she was abused. She was tortured mentally or physically by her tyrannical husband, that is John White. So these are the main characters in Triffles, the one of play. So let's talk about the plots. Okay, what's the plot? What are the different stories? Yeah, connected to the this play. The county attorney George Henderson, the local sheriff Henry Peters, and the neighboring farmer Lewis Hale. Mrs. Peters and Mrs. Hale arrive at John and Minnie Wright's abandoned farmhouse. They come to the house because John Wright was killed. So they have come here to investigate the case. So they go in the kitchen and they see that the kitchen was in the mess. Okay, the kitchen is in disorder with unwashed dishes, a loaf of uncooked bread, and the dirty towel on the table. So this shows that, the messy management of the kitchen, or maybe this scenario says that what mostly male characters or men want women to do. Yes. Okay, then the sheriff asked Lewis Hale to explain everything because Lewis Hale had come the previous day, yes, previous day, and because of this, Mr. Sheriff or the sheriff asked Lewis to uh, explain the incidents, explain the scene which he saw the previous day. Okay. So describe the scene he discovered at the farmhouse the previous day. Everything is same since yesterday, despite having sent one man ahead to prepare a fire to keep. Actually, it was the cold season, so it was cold, quite cold. So one man had been sent to prepare for the fire to keep warm because a county attorney, sheriff, and others, they were supposed to come, and it was quite cold to in the house or in the farmhouse. So one man was sent to prepare the fire to keep warm, and everything except that was same. Mr. Hale describes that he arrived at the house at past 8 o'clock uh, with a hope to convince John Wright to invest in the party line telephone with him. Actually, he had come there to investigate, to request John Wright so he would install, to the telephone, and his wife, John's wife, means Minnie. Minnie could keep in touch with some others people also and combat loneliness because in the farmhouse, Minnie Minnie Wright was quite alone. She was, quite isolated. She didn't have anyone to talk to when John used to be, mm, on his duty. So Mr. Hale had come there to convince John to install the telephone. And he had thought that if he would talk to John in front of his wife, then he would agree. So thinking of that, he talked about that. So helped to ask him before his wife and found Minnie right. But what happened when he came there, he found Minnie right. Yes, Minnie right was quite queer and without paying much attention to what he's saying. Mr. Hale was telling her something, but she was strangely looking, okay, and she was looking very indifferent to what he is saying. Yes, so she was sitting in the rocking chair, and the rocking chair was moving from back and forth, and she was working with, she was pleating with the apron in her hand. Okay. Then Mr. Hale asked to see John, and Minnie told him that he couldn't because John was dead. And when Mr. Hale asked the reason why he's dead, then Minnie said that he tied up a rope around his neck. So Minnie was sitting there. Hale went there. Hale asked about John because he had come here to talk regarding the installation of a telephone. But when after he asked Minnie regarding John, she said that he was dead. Okay, this was the situation. Then what happened? He went there, but he didn't think to take the rope out of the neck of John, who was dead. So he thought that if you do that, yes, evidence won't be clear. So to keep the evidence, he didn't do that. So concealing his first instinct to remove the rope from the neck in order to preserve any evidence, Mr. Hale questioned Minnie Wright about the murder. Okay, about the murder he questioned. Then she claimed that despite having been sleeping in the bed with him, she didn't wake up due to sound sleep. And she said that somebody slipped a rope around his neck and strangled him, killed him. But as a matter of fact, as a matter of surprise, that she was sleeping by the side of him, but she didn't know anything. She said, yes, somebody came inside, somebody broke into her house, yes, and put the rope around his neck and strangled him, but she didn't know. She said. When Mr. Hale sent for the coroner to question her, coroner means investigator, okay, to question her, she moved to the chair and laughed also. She laughed, knowing the reason why Mr. Hale had come. And Mr. Hale said that he had come to talk to John about installing the telephone, and after seeing now that she laughed at the time, but again she became quite scared. So her behavior, her demeanor was quite different and quite queer, strange, and this also suspicious behavior. The men don't look closely around the kitchen for the evidence of a motive, but discover Minnie's frozen and broken canning jars of fruits. Yes, the men who were there, they found the canning jars, but the canning jars, was broken. Yes, and in the canning jars, what happens? Minnie had stored some fruits. Okay, some fruits, and this from this one, what we can say, this also shows a type of innocence Minnie Rice had. Okay, and her skill in preserving things and her innocence, which was trapped by which was mostly covered or preserved inside a jar. Okay, so she had a type of patience, and breaking of the jars to some extent can show that her innocence, her patience has not got much time. Her patience, her innocence has got limitation. Okay, we can say so. So and Mrs. Peters says that Minnie was worried about her canning jars, yes, would explode in the cold weather. So from this also we can say the cold weather may have a type of symbolism. Okay, cold weather, she wanted to preserve fruits, and this also shows her next or her let's say skill Simply her innocence, using her innocence, she has preserved the things. Okay, and cold weather means maybe the situation is not well. Maybe her relationship with her husband is not sorry, was not good enough. Okay, well, okay. So breaking of the jar may indicate that her patience or her innocence, and yes, can't bear any kinds of abuse, any kinds of dominations, or any kinds of misunderstanding with her husband. So cold weather shows her growing a cold relationship with her husband. The sheriff jokes that a woman would worry about such things while held for murder. Held as that the women are used to worrying over trifles. Okay, and so these situations mostly this shows that women are mostly related with such kinds of things, such things related with the kitchens. This shows that what kinds of attitudes or what kinds of perspectives men have towards women. Okay, a type of a type of mindset which mostly men have towards women to devaluate their works. Okay, so uh, then looking over the maze in the kitchen, because the kitchen was not well managed, Mr. Sheriff, yes, blamed that Minnie was not quite good at housekeeping, because she was not keeping the house well. The things in the kitchen were scattered here and there. But in response to that, Mrs. Hale mostly pointed out that there are many things that women have to do to keep a farmhouse running. Okay, and she also said that, or talking about the when Sarif talked about the dirty towel, she has that a woman has to do many things, and men's hands are not always clean. It means men's are not only good. Okay, so men's also have such kinds of faults, or men also have any kinds of bad habits. Okay, so this also shows that men just men's dirt the things, and the things which are dirt, which are made dirty by men. Yes, these things have to be cleaned by women. So here this shows a type of discriminations, yes, which is going on between male and female. When the attorney accuses Mrs. Hale of being loyal to her own sex, when Mrs. Hale said so, the attorney says that she was supporting her sex. Yes, it means a female supports another female. Okay, so Mrs. Hale explains that she has rarely seen Minnie Wright over the last few years due to business, and as the home never seemed very cheerful to her. She says that actually it's been long that she has not visited mini rights or rights family. There's the reason, one reason that she sees herself quite busy, and one more thing that the environment or the relationship between Minnie and the John was not good. She said so. So the women are, this shows that the women are united by their common experiences and loyal to each other. The men go then upstairs to inspect the bedroom, leaving the women over there. Yes, and Mrs. Peters and Mrs. Hale, they collect necessary items from the kitchen to be brought to the jail, because Minnie has been arrested and she is supposed to be kept in the jail. So she needed things. She needs things over there, including clothes and apron. This makes the women know the reason of Minnie not joining women's aid or activities. It means Minnie was going through great poverty. Yes, Minnie in the past, Minnie was called to participate in the women's aid. Yes, women's aid, but she didn't participate over there. And this now, while investigating the things, uh, now women knew that yes, Minnie women knew that Minnie was suffering from poverty. She didn't have economic freedom. She didn't have much money as she used to have before marriage. So this shows that she was in problem. The women discover a kilt also. Yes, that Minnie Wright was in the process of making. Actually, kilt may also symbolize something. Kilt may symbolize that her hard work, or how she was weaving, how she was knitting uh, the kilt. Knitting the kilt may mean that how she was struggling to make her relationship with John White, yes, good. Yes. So Minnie was in the process of making that. She was trying to make her relationship, yeah, quite good, quite well, but she was not able to do that. Mrs. Hale notices that the kilt is very poorly sewn at the end. At the later part of her their conjugal life, maybe it was not. She couldn't, she couldn't make it good. Okay, she couldn't improve it. She starts pulling out the stitches to correct them, and saying that bad sewing always made her fidgety, made her, uneasy. So this also shows that, Mrs. Hale should have been there to help, Minnie, so that she could be um, able to make a good relationship with her husband. It means she could also add something. She could do something to maintain a relationship, cordial relationship between Minnie and John. So this symbolizes that. Okay, then Mrs. Peters looks for paper or a string to package up the clothes to be taken to the jail, and discovers an empty, broken bird cage. She discovered, okay, and with the door, but the bird cage, yeah, its door was not closed. There was no bird, okay, inside. Yes. And the reason of the cage being empty is not known to them. At first, they didn't know why the cage was empty, where the bird was. They didn't know at first. So this shows that how the bird was, caged inside, how the bird was locked inside, trapped inside. So this shows a type of concept of, imprisonment. Yes, imprisonment and isolation, which Minnie Wright was facing. So when we compare this one, this also shows that, you know the cage is the farmhouse, and the bird is not there. I mean, the bird must have fled somewhere to be free. Okay, breaking, opening the door. Yes. So from this we can predict. Let's move forward, then we can know much about that. So Mrs. Hale regrets not visiting Minnie to accompany her in her loneliness when her wife was out to work. Actually, this also shows her responsible habit. This shows that the role of, a neighbor is more for maintaining relationships with the neighbors or neighbor families. So she regrets not visiting. Okay. So while searching swing materials, Mrs. Hale notices a pretty red box. Red box. Mrs. Hale notices, opens it. Then, yeah, as a matter of surprise, yes, both of the women then discover the body of the dead bird, the canary. Okay, and the dead bird was wrapped in a piece of silk with its neck twisted or wrung. So neck was twisted. Somebody must have killed, the bird, twisting its neck, and that was kept inside the box. They discovered. From this also we can say that somebody must have, killed the bird. Maybe the context is that, the bird was killed. Yes, and the bird, who can be the bird? Yeah, as we discussed earlier, yeah, Minnie was also a good singer. Yes, so canary also sings well, so we can compare, Minnie as the bird. Yes, and the bird has been killed. Maybe the bird didn't, enjoy, freedom. The bird was locked inside. Yes, the no liberty. The bird was, the bird was, enjoying. So the bird wanted to be free, but but the condition is that the bird is killed. Maybe squeezed. Okay, the neck is squeezed or neck is twisted. So when the men return, Mrs. Hale hides the box, containing the dead bird under the quilt. Here, from this, we can see that actually the bird may be maybe an evidence. But here, Mrs. Hale is hiding that box, thinking that yes, thinking that the bird relates with the evidence which can prove many for many many is false, okay, and or many is crime. So see here that Mrs. Hale tells the attorney that the cat got the bird, and when he asked about the bird, yes, when they saw, because the bird was not revealed, the bird was covered, okay. So Sari, Mr. Attorney asked about that, where the bird was, and Mrs. Hale added that the any cat must have got the bird or killed the bird. Mrs. Hale tells Mrs. Peters the real killer of the bird is John Wright. See, actually, she didn't tell the men about that, but Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Peters, these two are talking, and then Mrs. Hale tells Mrs. Peters that the real killer of the bird is John Wright. Yeah, John Wright killed the bird, okay, and the bird was only her company, okay, loneliness, and to take revenge, yes, Minnie killed her husband, okay. She said so, Mrs. Hale said so. So regretting not visiting Minnie, Mrs. Hale accepts it as a crime, as each woman goes through a different kind of the same thing. Here, Mrs. Hale, she regrets not visiting, Minnie. She thinks that if she had visited Minnie, she would have done something. She would not have failed, captivized. She wouldn't have failed, isolated. She could have, assuaged her pains, yes, or she could be able to, make her relationship with her husband good, okay. But she regrets not going there, not visiting there. This also shows that the role of neighbor is more important, and a neighbor can settle the misunderstanding, marital misunderstanding or family misunderstanding, okay. So Mrs. Peters tries to hide the box with the data board in her too small bag, and then Mrs. Hale conceals it in her pocket. So when you see Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Peters, these two cooperate. It means females cooperate, and a female or females support another female. That is meaning. Okay, so the women conceal the dead bird in their final unified act of defiance against the control of their husbands and the law that is made and regulated by men. So they jointly work against against the rules or law made by women, made by men to control women. So this also the cooperation or unification of female characters can show that they, to some extent, they work together to protest the traditional systems or social systems, yes, social systems which are responsible for um, male dominations over females. Okay, so let's talk of the theme. What is the theme of the story or the Triffles? Yes, female identity. One theme is that female identity. Females are dominated by men. Okay, so females are trying to create or trying to get their identity recognized through the absence of its key persona, Mrs. Wright. The power of silence speaks louder. See, the male characters or the men, they speak, but women, Mrs. Hale and Mrs. Peters, they work silently. Yes, they are supporting silently. So their power is more, and they have also, cooperated each other, and they have tried to, you know, um, they have tried to veil the evidence, the bird. Okay, so their power speaks over there. The entrapment of women to the gendered role of domesticity that exists in this drama. Actually, see the women, when you see when you read the drama very carefully, you can find that women are mostly limited to domestic works, or limited to kitchen works or something like this. Okay, so this also shows a type of entrapment, or let's say seizing the freedom of women, or the demarcation line between what the women have to do and what the men uh, do. So the men, in their power or self-importance, completely overlook the importance of women and their domestic activities. The women are, women are quite related to their own chores or works, okay, activities. But men, they don't see the importance of their works, their task, how many works they have to do, and how they jot down the tribals to make sense, or to make meaningful. Okay, and how their activities, how their hard works help to weave their relationships. Okay, so women's lives are both shaped and empowered under the restrictions of a domestic space, that means social operation of women. The portrayal of masculinity. Yes, another theme is that the masculinity is overemphasized, empowered. Yes, femininity is not femininity is hidden by masculinity. So the power of masculinity is shown here, and mostly one saying that goes made women for indoors and men for outdoor pursuits. The biggest irony of justice in trifle is that a woman's social situations exacerbated by patriarchal culture. See, uh, because when you see that culture is on there, how women are limited to indoors, yes, and how men look at them, yes, what types of mindsets men have towards female, that is displayed, that is shown in this story. And problems which mostly come, yeah, those come to women, they are due to the patriarchal culture, may lead a woman to crime and then unjustly punish her for it. So these situations, some kind of situations, yes, can force a woman to commit any crime. Yes. So the guilt of Mrs. Hale not visiting the rights. This is a type of guilt versus on the guilt of a neighbor should help others. Other neighbors. Okay, so the role of neighbor is more important in a society or in a community. That is also shown in this story. Then gender allegiance. Gender allegiance is also shown here. Here you see that male corporates males, yes, or female corporates females. Okay, so gender role is there. At one side there is gender loyalty, and other side there is legal duty. Okay, legal duty. Men are more related with their legal duty, whereas females loyalty is there for another female. Okay, gender role. So these are the themes, and around these themes mostly the story moves ahead. Now let's talk of the symbols. Some symbols also have been used in this story. When you see here the birds, rocking chair, then kilt, then notes, and in the same way canning jars. So what do they mean? House also. So trifles here symbolize the importance of the topics and items that concern the women. Actually, trifles means the petty, unimportant things. But here in this story, trifles symbolize, a great importance in this story. A tool to find the motive of killing. The kilt indicates Mrs. Wright's struggle in her marriage, how she was weaving the kilt, how she was knitting the kilt. So this shows that she was trying to make her relationship quite delicate, relationship quite deep. So her struggle was that, Minnie's struggle was that, yes. And the act of noting also shows that a kilt is linked to the act of killing a man with a rope around his neck to get freedom, to be free from such kinds of domination. The same way, the canary symbolizes Mrs. Right. Yes, as we also see that canary can sings well, and it's innocent bird, so like that. Minnie was also very innocent. She could also sing. Okay, who Mrs. Haley recalls used to sing herself, and the canary is killed here. Yeah, the deceased canary signifies Mrs. Wright silencing of Mrs. Wright, Mrs. Wright, or Mr. Wright silencing of Mrs. Wright. The bird also symbolizes Minnie's need for companionship in her childless home, as they don't have any children. The rocking chair serves as a presence for Mrs. Wright, since she is never actually present throughout the play. So her presence is shown through the rocking chair. Uh, the jar of preserves symbolizes Mrs. Wright's relationship with her husband, her innocence, her skill, her knack, how she was, quite skillful in managing such things. And apart from this, also this shows isolation and abuse caused her by her husband, yes, John Wright, yes, to explode and murder her husband. The canning jars of fruit also represent Minnie's extreme concern over her role as wife and her household responsibilities. The home is a symbol of confinement and hostage also. The trial, farmhouse where Minnie Wright is confined, where she is put as hostage, where she is abused, where she is tortured, or where her freedom is seized, her freedom is trapped by someone else. That means her husband. The maze in the kitchen symbolizes the ways in which the men in this play expect women to fulfill certain roles, as we discussed earlier. Then another, symbol such as is in this story is feminine consciousness. Female should be conscious. They should speak against any kinds of dominations, any kinds of suppressions or operations, yes, which are placed placed in front of them by social practices or traditions. So feminine consciousness and the feelings and perceptions associated with the female characters, identity of a woman. Okay, so these are some symbols which the writer has used in this play, and these are the sources I have used to prepare my